Hey, my name is Matt Holladay, and I build Heirloom surfboards, and we're here in my shop today with Fiberglass, Florida, and today we're going to talk about surfboard laminations. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about surfboard laminations. A surfboard lamination is a layer of fiberglass that goes on the bottom of the board and the top of the board. It provides strength and a watertight seal for the surfboard. There's many different types of laminations, and today we're doing an old school type of lamination, and it's called a tinted or pigmented lamination. This is where we put the color inside the resin, mix it up, shoot it with a hardener, and then pour it all over the board, and that gives you your color. Today we're going to be working on this 9.2 Heirloom surfboard. I just shaped it the other day. It's fresh out of the shaping room, so it is completely blown off and free of any dirt, dust, or fingerprints. That's priority number one. See, today we're going to be shooting the bottom of the board. Where you start is you tape off the deck. When you tape off the deck, this is going to be your lap line. This is going to be what comes from the bottom, wraps over, and ends right where this green tape is. I have already taped this off, and I chose a 2 1/4 inch lap. You can choose whatever size lap you want. What I added to the green tape is some yellow tape, a thickness of about 4 inches or so, and that will give me plenty of area as I'm working my squeegee with the resin up onto the deck. I won't end up smudging it all over this beautiful deck. After you've got your board taped off, it's time to take a look at your bottom and make sure it's clean of any dust or debris, because this is the first thing that we're going to shoot. Just give it a good blow. Now, I happen to know that this board is absolutely ready to be glass. There's no fingerprints or anything anywhere on it. So let's get started. You're going to want to make sure you've got fresh tape. You do not want your board moving around on you as you're laminating it. You want to go ahead and check and make sure your racks are level. And this is a surfboard factory, so close works as well. Using a barrier on my hands, the board comes over onto the laminating racks. And we're going to definitely want to make sure that it's centered, meaning I have just as much hanging off the end of this rack as I do hanging off the end of this rack. You also want your stringer to be running pretty much dead center between your two pieces of tape. Doesn't have to be dead center on this bar. It really matters where the tape is. So one thing that this board is going to get, it's going to get a tail patch, which is really a style that we saw back in the 60s and 70s. You would see these volant patches. This is 8-ounce volant glass. This is my favorite stuff to work with. You could see how thick, consistent, and how beautiful this cloth is. And this cloth really holds color well. So if you're doing color laminations, you really get a rich, beautiful finish using 8-ounce volant. I often like to use a dummy fin and just kind of look at about where my fin's going to be. It's important to pre-plan your moves. You see builders that maybe don't take as much care in pre-planning, and you'll see these big giant fin patches for a fin that's all the way back here. So pre-planning in all aspects of laminating is really key. So what I'm doing right now is I'm actually just going to mark about where I want my fin patch to end. Okay, so now pull about 6 inches, 8 inches past my tape mark. So here we go. I'm just going to go ahead and cut my 8-ounce volant at the very tip of the tail. And if I didn't do a good enough cut, I can fudge the glass a little bit, but not too much. Now, I'm going to, as gently as I can, cut along the rail line, the outline of the board. Once again, just taking my scissors and as close as I can get to the foam of the board, just making some really nice detailed cuts here all the way down to the tip of the tail. Now, for sure, the most important part, getting a symmetrical fin patch. Once again, we pre-plan and we really do our best, folding the glass in half, making sure that this fold is parallel with the stringer. So I'm satisfied with that. So with my patch folded in half, I'm going to attempt to make the tip of my fin patch right at this piece of tape, focusing on smooth, straight cuts. And there we go. I'll remove the piece of tape, which was my indicator piece. And oftentimes when you unfold the patch, it moves over to the left a little bit. So sometimes you have to help it back to center. Get it nice and flat. This is looking very, very symmetrical. I don't think we're gonna have an issue with this patch. We're ready to pull this beautiful 8-ounce Volan over this 9.2 Heirloom. Let's make it happen. Most important thing that's gonna happen here is as I'm pulling it over the board, if this glass touches this tail patch, as I'm pulling it over the board, it's gonna move this tail patch and we're gonna have an asymmetrical tail patch. So it is of utmost importance that I keep this glass up and away from the board until the very last moment when I drop it down. Okay. I was making sure the fibers of the 8-ounce Volan are parallel to my stringer. And even I have just another little adjustment that I can make. You really want to be able to look down there and see that your fibers are running 100% parallel. They're not veering off to the right or left. I can stand right here. I really want my strands here to be perpendicular with the stringer. And actually I can see that they're just a tad off. So I'll come over here. I'll just give them a little pull. It's a little bit difficult to get parallel perfect and perpendicular perfect, but you do the best you can to get a good product. Now that I'm satisfied with my weave pattern, perpendicular and parallel, I'm gonna go ahead and chop off. I'm gonna leave myself about 6 inches at the tail. I got 6 inches at the nose, extra. That's gonna wrap the rail. One of the final things to do before we start pouring resin on it is, obviously we've got way too much glass here. We're gonna wanna cut away some of this excess. I told you guys before that I have 2¼ inch laps on the deck. So I need 2¼ inches to make it to my tape line. So I'm obviously gonna give myself plenty more than that. This is about how long I'm gonna let my 8-ounce Volan laps hang. I'd say it's probably about 5 to 6 inches. Could be longer. When you wrap the nose, it's important to know that fiberglass doesn't really want to bend left or right. Yes, it'll bend like this. You know, it is a cloth, but it doesn't want to bend around a hard curve. So I'm going to leave a little bit extra in the nose area, and I think you guys will find out why in a little bit. With a wide nose like this, all I'm going to do is I'm going to put the very tip of my scissor all the way to the nose. I'll even touch the stringer. I'm touching the stringer right now. And I will just give it one solid cut. That's all I'm going to do. I have a square tail on this board, kind of square. So you could do this 100 different ways. This is how I do it. I'll go straight in the center of the stringer, one single cut. I will go straight at the corner of the left tail, straight on the right corner, and then I got a little extra, so I'll just get rid of that. Get rid of that, and get rid of that. I mean, that's a bunch of glass I don't have to deal with later. As I said before, this board is going to be a color lamination. It's an important thing to talk about. The steps that we're going to follow building this board are going to be the same steps that you would follow to build a clear Volan board, meaning this glass with no pigment in it at all. Today I'm going to choose a color that's very close to white. I have a beautiful balsa stringer on this board, so I want that to show through. So I'm going to use a base of white, and I think I'm going to turn it a little towards green, and we're going to end up with a really classy, old school green. What I have here is a brand new 5-gallon bucket of Silmar 249A. It's from Fiberglass, Florida. I've been using this stuff for 17 years. This stuff has never done me wrong. I love this stuff. Super consistent. Yep, let's pop the top on this thing and go to town. For this board, I'm going to use really close to a full bucket. Do I need a full bucket for this board? The answer is no. I don't need a full bucket for this board. You don't want to run out of resin. Now is not the time to skimp on resin. So I'm going to go ahead and give myself a nearly full bucket, and I'm also going to need a Dixie cup. This is going to be my base color, and which is going to be white, and this is going to be my green. I'm going to come up with some funky green, maybe an ugly green, maybe a pretty green, and this is going to get strained into here. All right, so what I have here is I've got a yellow pigment from Fiberglass, Florida. Into my mother color. Next color is also from Fiberglass, Florida. This is a green tint, and I've been using this forever. You can see what's happening there. By the way, this green will make anything from a what we call Coke bottle tint all the way to the deepest, darkest, almost black green. So it's a very versatile color. Now what I have here is my base color. My base color is going to be just straight white. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start slow. I don't want to add too much. Remember, I don't want this board to be opaque. I want to be able to see that balsa stringer. If anybody watched the glossing video, then they know I say stir until you think you're done, and then stir some more. Once again, don't want to go too far. You cannot take the white out once you've added it. So we just want to go a little bit at a time until we got perfect. All right, let's see what we got here. And it looks really good. Now, I'm going to add a little bit of green, which is going to darken this up even more, so I'm going to stop right there. It's important when you're putting what I call a mother color into your base color that you run it through a strainer. And once again, extremely important to add a little bit at a time. I don't want to go too far and end up with a darker green than I initially wanted. So I'm going to pour a little bit in, and that's where I'm going to stop. For those who don't know, that's a very small amount of green, at least for a bucket this size. Notice it disappeared, and now it starts showing itself. Okay, so we have a really, really classic looking green right now. I've got a clean finger. I'm going to go ahead and do a dip. I'm going to do a test, and you can see it's quite a bit more green than our first two tests. And I'm loving it so far already. I'm absolutely loving that. I've got a full bucket of resin. I'm going to shoot this board at about 20 cc's. Okay, it's important that you make sure you got all your catalyst in the bucket. Got my squeegee, let's go to town. My very first pour is going to be on the opposite side of the board, tail to nose, and this is where I saturate the entire bottom. And I can tell you right now, I am extremely happy with this color right now. If you got a little extra, you can wet the nose out a little bit. But the important thing that we're accomplishing right now is nose to tail, rail to rail, complete saturation. That's what that looks like. Now we begin working in thirds. Middle third, all the way from your opposite rail. Work the resin, push it down,
through the glass, all the way to the foam, and work it all the way till you get to the rail that you're standing at. If you have extra, it's okay. Go ahead and saturate that rail. The last thing we want is a dry rail. Okay, we're going to work on my left side, third. So whatever third is on your left side, that's the one that you go to first. Now we're going to go to the third on my right side, which is the tail. Keep in mind the tail has a 8-ounce volant patch, which is going to need a little extra attention. Okay, now I'm in the perfect position for my rail pour. Here I come. And this is what a rail pour looks like. You can even dip your squeegee in the bucket and wet out your rail. And I'm going to take any excess, I'm going to pull it all the way down the rail so we end up with a nice clean side right there. Now we're going to make our nose to tail pour. Okay, here we are. All right. And how about just for kicks, I will show the camera about how much resin I have left. I have about a quarter bucket left. All right, at this point, I will go back to my thirds. I work the rail that's opposite to me, and I work the resin all the way until it gets to my rail. And now I'm really mashing it down. I'm pushing the resin through that 8-ounce all the way to the foam. If you remember what I said before, the second third that you work on is the third that's on your left shoulder. So this is going to be the tail for me right now. And now we're going to go ahead and come to the final third. And I should mention, at this point right now, you shouldn't really have any more work to do. The board should be completely saturated. You should be ready to do your final pour. This is what your final pour looks like. And now we are going to split the board up into quarters. This is a quarter, this is a quarter, this is a quarter, and this is a quarter. Here we go. This is where you want to keep your hand steady, leaving the board plenty saturated, but removing any excess. There we go. Now I'm going to work this resin all the way till it's on the rail, and then I'm going to stop. Right there, I'm going to stop. Once again, I'm going to work in quarters, so I'm going to take this quarter of the board. Nice, easy squeegee pressure. Nice, easy squeegee. There we go. And just like that, it's beautiful. Now we start in the center of the board. We start tucking laps. This is how you tuck a lap. Push it onto your tape. Push it onto your tape. Push it onto your tape. Okay, here we go. We're going to do this side now. Go ahead, push it onto your tape. Push it onto your tape. Continue working until you run out of glass. I think I mentioned earlier in the video that the nose was going to be dicey, and the nose is a very dicey area. You've got to be really aware of what you're doing. And I'm going to go ahead and start in the center of the board again. I've got some strings. I can go ahead and pull those out easily. And I'm going to continue pushing my glass up onto the tape until I run out of glass. Once again, it's getting dicey up here at the nose. Got to be careful, folks. And have no fear. I'm going to come back and I'm going to fix all this up. Don't worry. Some people might take note that I guess the word is ambidextrous. I use my right and my left hand. If you can implement that style, it's really going to help your glassing. Now the rails are a mess. There's drips everywhere. All those drips have to go. Every single one of them has to go. For the next 15 minutes or so, my life is going to revolve around cleaning drips on the rails. And I'm going to be continually cleaning my squeegee and removing excess. Cleaning my squeegee, removing excess. You pretty much stop working the rail when the resin hardens. And the resin is beginning to harden now. Stretch a bit. It's no longer liquid. It's entering a gel state. After you've removed so much resin from the rail that you find that your squeegee is so dirty that it's actually putting resin back on the rail, that's the time where you clean your squeegee. This doesn't mean that you're done. We are far from done. With the squeegee, again, clean as can be. So let's continue removing the puddles and making sure that this thing is saturated. Now, you may notice that some of the excess resin I'm pushing up onto the tape. The tape is a very safe place for the resin to be. The reason is all the tape is going to get cut off the board. I'm using a very, if the camera can get this, you can see how much resin I'm taking off the board at this moment. Extremely small amounts of resin. So we're really getting down to the finishing strokes here. Look at that. See, I don't want this on the board. And we got a symmetrical patch.
You can see, if the camera can catch it, if you look across the board, it's very uniform and there's no puddles and or dry spots in any one location. It's very much uniform, and each of the weaves, they all kind of look like each other. And uniformity is the key here. When we come back, we're going to flip this bad boy over. It's going to be nice and hard, and we're going to cut the lap. I'll show you guys how to cut lap. Peace. And what we have now is a pretty darn hard surfboard. I'm going to flip this board over, and we are going to begin cutting the lap. All you want to do is go ahead and find your lap. It's really nothing to it. I'll go ahead and bridge the gap between the two rails. Gently lift up on what you just cut. And then this is the fun part. You just hack and hack. Boom. Now at the nose, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to cut right along your tape line. The fun part. Just get the cut right through there. And all right. All right, this is a proper cut lap. This is how I was taught. I was taught at Ricky Carroll's factory. That's where I learned how to laminate. I learned from some real laminating masters there. And this is what they taught me, is a proper cut lap. The tape comes up. We enter right here, and we zipper all the way down. And it's going to go fast. Here we go. This is how it looks right here. If you're wondering how it should look, I kind of like this visual. It should look like your razor blade is getting barreled by a wave. If your razor blade doesn't look like it's in the tube, you're blowing it. Take your blade, enter the cut lap, and get your razor blade in a nice fat barrel It's a fast process, it doesn't take long. And there we go. Alright guys, thanks for joining me here in the Heirloom shop in Cocoa, Florida. Thank you to Fiberglass Florida for joining me. If you guys need any materials, any of the stuff that I used today, from my 8-ounce faux land to my resin to my acetone, it all came from Fiberglass Florida. So go check those guys out. If you want to see more of my work, go to Instagram, go to Heirloom Surfboards, and check out my stuff. Until next time, peace.